Okay, so welcome back to the Living the Time of Your Life Masterclass. This is day 2. And I just want to touch briefly on what we covered yesterday so that we know how it ties into what we're going to talk about today. So we did the 168 hours exercise so that we could see if we're trying to do too much by setting ourselves up to fail. And the reason we wanted to start there was so we can come to a place of finding more time in our day and our lives to focus on the things that are important to us. And that's why we did the personal value statement to talk about and get clear on our own personal priorities and what matters most to us. So we're going to jump right in to today, and I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see what we're going to talk about today. Because as I was saying a little earlier, I'm very excited to share some of my favorite tools with you today. All right, so day 2, we are going to talk about how to prioritize what's important to you. There's 2 parts to this, which is knowing what is important to you, which is what we covered with our personal value statement. And there is finding time, making time, having time to focus on what we have determined is in fact important to us. Then we're going to do that with an exercise called the 3 Bs. Then we're going to talk about how to improve our relationship with time by going through what I call the language of time transformation. And then we're going to talk about how to get and stay motivated by using self-compassion. How to prioritize what's important to you. That's what we're starting with now. And we're going to use an exercise called the 3 Bs. And the 3 Bs are 3 questions that you're going to ask yourself anytime you're presented with a task or obligation or responsibility. And the questions are, can you bag it? Can you barter it? Or can you better it? So let me explain to you what that means. So when you ask the question, can you bag it? You're asking yourself, can you just drop it? Can you just let it go? No one's going to do it. You're not going to do it. We have a lot of things in our lives that are shoulds that other people think are important. And sometimes we focus on those things when really they're not that important to us. And there may be consequences for not doing those things. But if we're okay with the consequences, then we can just bag them. We can just decide not to do them. And so a simple example that I like to share with people is the floors in my house. I like for them to be really clean, but I have 2 cats and a dog and a 12-year-old daughter. So, and we live in the Northeast where we track in, dirt and salt from the roads and stuff in the winter. So my floors are not always as clean as I would like for them to be. If I wanted them to really be clean, I would need to vacuum every single day. I don't want to vacuum every single day. So I've bagged it. I'm okay with the consequences of not having a perfectly clean floor because I don't want to vacuum every day. So I bag it. So there are things in life where we can say, I'm okay with those consequences. I'm going to bag it. So that's the first question we ask. And the second question we ask is, can I barter it? And this is the heart to me of good time management and finding more time in your day to focus on what's important to you, because bartering it is about delegating. So we ask, can I barter it? Now, true bartering wouldn't include paying someone to do something, but in this exercise, we're going to include that. If there's a service, if there's a person that you can pay to do something that does need to be done, you're not okay with not doing it, but maybe you're not the one who has to do it. So can I barter it? And another simple example, sticking with my example of my not so greatly clean floors, is having a housekeeper. That's someone I pay who comes in every other week to really clean the house. I also have a Roomba that I can run when I need to. And that's kind of delegating or bartering. So that's something that I want to happen pretty regularly, not daily. So I have these other people or services that can handle it for me. Then the last B is, can you better it? And bettering it is what we ask ourselves when there is something that we either have to do ourselves or we choose to do ourselves. So maybe you could have someone else take your child to school in the morning, but that's something that you want to do yourself. So you do that. Or there are some things that only you can do yourself. Only you can exercise for yourself. Only you can sleep. Only you can eat, these kinds of things. And so we ask, is there a way that I can better it that makes it easier for me to do or to enjoy it more? So an example in my life is exercise, and that several years ago, I wanted to take up running. I wanted a new sort of cardiovascular exercise. And I wanted to be able to go running, but I don't really like running, or I didn't at the time. And I didn't really feel motivated to do it. So, how did I better it? I joined a running club. So, I got a running coach who put together a schedule for me, and I had accountability partners that I could check in with. So, that was a way for me to better something that I really wanted to do, but was having a hard time doing it. So, those are the three questions we ask. Can I bag it? Can I barter it? Can I better it? And now I'm going to put the slide back up in just a minute so you can see the three questions and remember them. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes to go through your list from yesterday where you were doing the 168 hours exercise, where you're detailing the things that need to happen in your week, and see if there are things that can be bagged, bartered, or bettered. All right. I'm going to start a timer and give you 3 minutes. As you're doing the exercise, don't worry if you don't have someone in mind or a service in mind that to whom you can barter, or with that you can barter with. We'll worry about that later. Just think about the things that someone else could do, not necessarily you have someone in mind already. All right, well, halfway through, so 1.5 minutes left. All right, 30 more seconds. All right, so let's wrap that up. And one of the real beauties of this exercise is that oftentimes when we have too much to do, what falls to the wayside is self-care. Um, we cut out sleep, we cut out time for exercise. Whenever we use the three Bs, especially the bartering portion, we can then find time in our day to do those other things that are important to us. When I send an email later today, with uh, the recording and notes for tomorrow, I will send you a worksheet called Building a Barter Network, and it gives you ideas for sources of people and services that you can use for bartering. So that's the tool that you can use if you've thought of things that you can barter or delegate, but you don't know anyone to whom you can delegate. That's what that worksheet will be for. Okay, let's move on to our second topic, which is how to improve your relationship with time. And I call this the language of time transformation because we can't change time, as we talked about yesterday. Everybody has 168 hours in a day. I mean, in a week. Oh, 168 hours in a day would be awesome. 168 hours in a week. So we can't change that, but we can change how we think and talk about time. So let's talk about that for just a minute. So the way that we often think about and talk about time is really not helping us a lot of the times. And so it's not just semantics because the way that we think and talk about things oftentimes changes the outcome. And we can think of other times in life where that's the case, where how we think about something is changing the outcome and how we handle it. And I think an example that a lot of people can relate to is physical fitness or weight loss, right? So it's more important how we think about our weight than how our weight actually is. So what do I mean by that? If we are at a certain body fat percentage or a certain inches around, and we conceive of that as negative in some way, it doesn't matter whether it actually is negative. It matters that we think it's negative. And that can affect how we act. So consider someone who, for example, continually tells himself he's overweight, regardless of whether or not he is. And that makes him feel less than or unworthy or sad or unmotivated because he's attaching a negative connotation to it. And because he is feeling down, he is lacking motivation, which is creating a problem with motivation for exercise, say, for example. And that lack of motivation and that can lead to a feeling of depression. So he comforts himself with maybe chocolate ice cream or comfort food of some kind, right? And that just makes the problem worse. So the point is, it's not so much what the actuality of it is, it's how the person is thinking about it that's perpetuating the problem. And so that is also true with the way that we think and talk about time. So that's why I want to give you language that you can use instead so that you can transform the way that you think about time. So I have 4 different turnarounds that I want to share with you in the language of time transformation. So the first one that we use, and I think this might be my favorite one, is we often say, I don't have enough time. And it may actually be true that you don't have enough time to do all the stuff that you need to do. But if we can turn that around to helpful language and say instead, I have too much to do, that then empowers us to make a change to what we're doing because we can't change the time. The thing that we can control is ourselves and what we're doing. So it takes us out of victimhood to time and instead empowers us to make changes. So when we say, I have too much to do, we can start thinking about, is there someone else, another service, back to the 3 Bs, that can take away some of the stuff that I have to do because I have too much to do. The next one is I'm so busy. We're all so busy. It doesn't really mean much anymore, right? Everybody's busy. But for me, the big problem with I'm so busy was it made me feel rushed and it made me feel like I had no control over what was happening in my life. And the thing that we can control is ourselves and what we're doing. So if we can switch that to I have lots of opportunities right now, that again empowers us to make changes, to make choices, going back to our personal value statement. If it's opportunities, then we can choose whether to take them or not based upon our personal value statement. So changing I'm so busy, do I have lots of opportunities right now? The next is I have to instead of, and changing that to I get to. And this is a simple one that again empowers us and engenders a sense of gratitude for all that we get to do in our days. So I could say I have to make breakfast for my daughter every morning, but I could instead say I get to. I get to get up. I get to spend the 25 minutes with her. I get to decide what healthy food we have in the house. So just that little word of, oh, I have to work out. No, you get to work out. It's a choice that you're making, and you get to do that because it's your life and you've made that choice. And then the last one is saying yes to things that you don't want to do or that don't align with your values and goals. That's not helpful. So instead, the helpful turnaround is always asking yourself if the task or opportunity or responsibility is aligned with your values or moving you toward the vision that you have for your life. Because again, that empowers us to control what we can control, which is ourselves, and to not be a victim to time. The next topic we're going to cover is how to motivate yourself with self-compassion. I have 2 tools I'm going to share with you today, but let's talk about first why we want to use self-compassion. I think many of us think that we are successful because we are hard on ourselves, because we push ourselves. And the scientific research has actually shown that we succeed despite having pushed ourselves so hard, not because we pushed ourselves so hard. And when we think about it, that makes sense. Because if you're trying to motivate someone else, say you're trying to motivate your child, you're trying to motivate a pet, you're trying to motivate a team member at work to do something, berating them, yelling and screaming at them, and telling they're stupid because they did it wrong last time is not very motivating. When we do that to ourselves, we think it's going to motivate us. But the truth is, when we're compassionate towards other people and toward ourselves, we're more likely to feel motivated to make change because we feel like we're able to make change. So let's treat ourselves like we treat other people and treat ourselves with compassion. And though we often have a hard time with that, we can practice it by showing that compassion to other people. And as we learn to be more compassionate toward other people, we can then turn it toward ourselves with self-compassion toward ourselves. One tool that works for some people is to have a picture of themselves as a small child and think about how amazing that small child is and what you would say to that small child if they made a mistake, if they didn't reach their goal, if they did something wrong. and say those same things to yourself because you are still that small child. So that's one tool we can use. Another tool we can use is a mantra. And so I have some mantras that I want to share with you that can engender self-compassion. So the first one is my favorite. I have enough, I do enough, I am enough. I've shared that mantra on social media many times, and every time it always resonates with people. And I think it's particularly important because we often feel like no matter what we do, we're not enough. We don't have enough. We're not doing enough. And so this is a really special mantra in my mind. Another favorite mantra of mine is from Winnie the Pooh. And it is, I am braver than I believe, stronger than I seem, and smarter than I think. This is a good one to help us realize our own worth, as is the next one, which is, I am worthy and I am loved. Embrace reality is a mantra that is good for those of us who struggle with control, because sometimes reality is not what we want it to be, but that doesn't change the fact that that's reality. So sometimes embrace reality is a really important mantra for us. And then the last mantra I want to share with you is based upon loving kindness meditation, which is, may I be safe, may I be healthy, and may I be happy. And that is the root of self-compassion right there. Okay. Let's review what we talked about today so you know what your action items and takeaways are. So we learned how to prioritize what's important to you by using the 3 B's in conjunction with your personal value statement that you created yesterday. And these two together are going to make sure that you have time for what matters to you, and that you still are getting all the things done and have more time in your day. We then talked about how to improve your relationship with time with the 4 turnarounds for time transformation from unhelpful to helpful language. Then we talked about how self-compassion is important for motivation, and your action items and takeaways will be to build your support network and apply the 3 B's going forward to all the things in your life. And I'm going to send you the worksheet via email for building your barter network or your support network. For your time transformation language, maybe you want to put up one of those. I have too much time, I have too much to do, for example, on a sticky note somewhere where you can see it instead of so you can get in the habit of using the time transformation language. And then the last one is to choose and use a mantra. That's our 25 minutes. We will have question and answer now. So I'll stop sharing. All right. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Is so great, Jamie. What I love is the little nuggets per day for each section. And I also want to commend you for you're not rushed, and it's all really clear and concise. And one of my favorite takeaways is the mantras. When I was moving through a really tough time with my divorce, things were crazy. It felt so out of control, even though it wasn't. And my mantra during that time, and still to this day, is I live an abundant and joyful life. And even though it didn't necessarily feel like that at the time, it just helped. Those mantras are really powerful and impactful. So I loved your mantras. I took a picture of them so I could remember them. So
great. Yeah, those are in the workbook too, if anybody needs them. Yep.
I love that mantra, Lisa. I just wrote that down.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I tend to always think of things from a standpoint of lack. So that's a really wonderful mantra. I wanted to add that I thought one of the time language transformation items that is actually really kind of an action item was the fourth one, about figuring out if a task is aligned with your values before you say yes.
Mhm.
I think particularly as women, sorry, Dinesh, as women, we want to please everybody. We want to grant every wish of our children. We want to be wonderful spouses and the people who get things done at work. And I often go to yes before I even stop to think, can I really take this on?
Mhm.
So that's something that I'm trying to work on. And then, you know, and the inverse, right, is like setting boundaries.
Mhm. That's right. Yeah, those are two great
I
points.
think men have the same problems. You don't have to be sorry for that. I liked, again, when we said yesterday, we talked about combining these roles. That seemed to work for me. I was just looking at the list of, obviously, I should bag all the relationships, right? No, maybe not. Not what I was saying was simply spend time together. You know, I don't have, I can just make cooking a hobby, which I've been thinking about, and that could be a hobby that could bring children and significant other together, make it a point to cook 2 meals together every evening,
Mhm.
which is something I am going to do. It makes sense, and then find different recipes and stuff, and that takes care of the relationship, the health, the hobby. I think
Mhm.
I think it's, for me, it's going to be trying to work all this together, because it's very hard to, as when you're in a business, there's no set time to work and other things. I'm sure everybody feels the same way.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love all of those comments, actually. Thank you, Lisa and Nicole and Dinesh, because it's so great to hear how a mantra can sort of make those new neural pathways in our brains that even if we don't believe it, sometimes when we're saying it, it actually makes a difference. And Dinesh, how to combine so that we are achieving more with just one thing, right? That achieving more, moving further towards what we want our life to be like, by combining like that. And Nicole, taking that pause, that breath before we say yes, and making that a habit so that it is ingrained in us that we always do that. That is such an important part of time management. Sometimes the simplest time management tool we can utilize is no. That's it, right? So thank you for sharing all of those. And now we're at the end of our 30 minutes. So um, I am so glad that you joined me today. I will send the recording around, and if you want to watch it again, and I will include the worksheet, and then I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jamie.
Hi, thank you.